about buying a home? You might be wondering if you qualify as a first-time buyer. Here's the surprising part. You don't necessarily have to be brand new to homeownership to get first-time buyer perks. Today, we'll walk through exactly who qualifies, why it matters, and how you can take advantage of programs designed to make homeownership more affordable. So what exactly makes someone a first-time homebuyer? A first-time homebuyer isn't just someone who has never owned before. By definition, you qualify if you've never owned a home or if you haven't owned and lived in a primary residence in the last 3 years. That's called the 3-year rule. The other requirement is that the property you're buying must be your primary residence and not a vacation home or an investment property. This broader definition opens the door for many people who might not realize they qualify, like long-term renters, people who've been through foreclosure or divorce, or anyone who's taken time away from home ownership. Who might qualify even if they've owned a home before? Plenty of repeat buyers can qualify again. If you sold a home and then rented for at least 3 years, you're treated like a first-time buyer under the rules. Programs often target groups like teachers, nurses, first responders, and veterans. People who provide critical services but may not have a lot of cash saved up. The key is that your most recent home ownership falls outside that 3-year window. So even if you've owned property in the past, you could be considered a first-timer again today. Why does first-time buyer status matter? This status matters because it comes with access to special assistance. Many programs and lenders give first-time buyers benefits like down payment assistance, closing cost help, tax credits, or even loans with more flexible guidelines. These benefits can be worth thousands of dollars and are designed to make that first or first again purchase easier and more affordable. Without that status, you might miss out on programs that could lower both your upfront costs and your long-term financial burden. What about people who previously owned homes but under different circumstances? There are some special situations where you may still qualify as a first-time buyer even if you've technically owned before. For example, a single parent who only owned with a former spouse could qualify because their financial situation has changed. A displaced homemaker, which is someone who owned with a partner but no longer has a share in the home, may also qualify. And in some cases, if your previous home wasn't built to current building codes and couldn't be brought up to code, you could still be considered a first-time buyer. These exceptions recognize that not all ownership situations provide the same foundation for buying again. What happens if I own a vacation home or investment property? Owning a vacation property or an investment home doesn't necessarily disqualify you. That's because first-time buyer status is based on whether you've owned and lived in a primary residence within the past 3 years. If you've owned a rental property or a second home that you didn't live in full-time, you may still be considered a first-time buyer. This is an important distinction, especially for people who've invested in real estate but haven't yet owned their own personal residence. What does the 3-year rule mean in practice? The 3-year rule is what gives many repeat buyers a fresh start. Once 3 full years have passed since you last owned and lived in a primary residence, you're eligible for first-time buyer programs again. This can include people who sold a house and then rented, those who went through foreclosure, or people who lost a home in a divorce. As long as 3 years have gone by without owning and occupying, you're treated like a first-time buyer. That means access to grants, lower down payments, and assistance programs you might not expect to qualify for. How can I find out if I'm eligible for first-time buyer perks. The best way is to start with a lender who's familiar with first-time buyer programs in your state. They'll look at your ownership history and see if you meet the 3-year rule. You'll likely need to show documents like old deeds, sales records, or tax filings to prove you haven't owned recently. Some programs also require you to take a homebuyer education course to prepare for the responsibilities of ownership. Beyond lenders, many state and local housing agencies maintain lists of programs specifically for first-time buyers. Checking with them early can give you a clear idea of what's available before you start shopping for a home. Being a first-time buyer doesn't always mean it's your very first home. If you haven't owned or lived in a primary residence in over 3 years, or if you fall under one of the exceptions, you could qualify for valuable programs designed to make homeownership more affordable. Don't assume you're ineligible. Do the research, ask questions, and see what resources are available. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe for more tips to make home buying easier.